Hello friends, welcome back to the Parsonage. It's Pastor Don from First United Methodist Church of Brazoria, and it's time for yet another stay-at-home daily devotional. But before I start, let me first apologize for the lengthy pause in producing these devotionals. Due to a frustrating technical issue with the iPad I edit these videos with, an issue Apple is aware of and that I spent literally hours on the phone with tech support concerning, well, I was unable to produce any until I received a recent surprise gift of a MacBook computer. Thank you, Gail. Then I had to learn the much more capable version of the editing software that runs on the much more powerful MacBook. But I'm back and looking forward to producing between 3 and 5 of these devotionals per week. Editing is still somewhat slower, but I'm coming up to speed. And I thank you for your patience as I worked through this problem. In his play, Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare wrote, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." The familiar tragedy concerned two feuding families, the Montagues and the Capulets, and the last names then mattered and, well, ultimately drove the tragic storyline. Names then are important. They help define who each of us is and where and from whom we're descended. And we have names and nicknames and other ways of defining our individual identities. And I remember my first Sunday in the ministry almost exactly 21 years ago. At the close of that first service, several elderly women walked up to me and said somewhat sternly, "How are we to address you?" After I confirmed all this, what she wanted to know was by what title did I wish to be addressed with, reverend, doctor, brother, pastor, whatnot. I was so new and unsure, all I could say was, "How about Don?" And to this day, most people call me Don, or perhaps Pastor Don, and well, I'm very happy with that. It works for me. Well, friends, in the 8th chapter of the Gospel of St. Mark, we see a similar question asked. At Caesarea Philippi, our Lord asked his disciples, "Who do the people say that I am?" You see, he just performed a series of amazing signs and miracles, and a crowd was following him, no doubt anxious to see what was coming next. And, well, the disciples replied, John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets. Then Jesus asked the disciples, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anybody about him. Jesus asked two very important questions. One, who does the crowd, the amazed and impressed crowd, think me to be? And two, who do you, my intimate disciples, believe me to be? Please tell me. Jesus, it seems, wanted to understand where everyone was regarding him and his ministry. And the answers were kind of, well, all over the place. Elijah, John the Baptizer, one of the great prophets, Jeremiah or Isaiah, Amos, Hosea, I don't know. People who announced or forewarned the coming of the Messiah. Then he asked his disciples for their belief, and Simon, a.k.a. Rocky, declared him to be the Messiah. Now, the term Messiah, which comes from the Hebrew word Mashiach, which means the anointed one of God. And, well, it means exactly the same thing as the Greek word Christos, from which we derive the English word Christ. So while the crowd saw Jesus as the harbinger, the herald of the Messiah, Simon declared him to be the Messiah. And this was a very powerful and meaningful declaration. Unfortunately, sadly, Simon didn't understand the meaning of the word he spoke. In the verses that follow, we see the depths of Simon's misunderstanding and perhaps a big clue as to why Jesus nicknamed him Peter, rocky. The Bible tells us, quote, "Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again." He said all this quite openly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things," unquote. Friends, can you imagine rebuking Jesus, the Son of God? Really? Well, Jesus puts him in his place quite decisively. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. And Satan is a Hebrew name meaning the adversary. Jesus, in fact, was far harsher with Simon Peter than, say, with Judas Iscariot when he betrayed him with a kiss. And although Simon got the right answer when asked by Jesus who he believed him to be, when he showed his work, remember math class, friends? Well, when he showed his work, he failed the test. You see, my friends, it's one thing to say nice things about Jesus, but it's another to understand and to embody the meaning of our words. Talk is cheap, they say, and likewise, God talk is easy and, well, cheap, and that's why our world, and especially social media, seems to be so full of armchair theologians. Memes, platitudes, and hollow, empty words make no claims upon our lives, but Jesus did and does, saying, quote, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me," unquote. And yet, we say such nice things about him, and we go on to live our lives then as we choose. So much for denying ourselves. Dietrich Bonhoeffer spoke of this saying, quote, "Christ is still being betrayed by the kiss," unquote. And in East Texas, we call this betrayal sin, and it deserves our Master's stern rebuke. So, my friends, who do you say he is? It's a vital question, truly life and death. It's a question each one of us must answer for ourselves. It defines our discipleship. I mean, exactly who do we think we're following and why? Is Jesus the Messiah, the Son of the living God, your sovereign Master and Lord, or is he simply someone we say nice things about, sing lovely songs about, or use in our vain exclamations? The answer lies not in our words, though, but in our deeds. You see, like Simon Peter, we too must show our work. If we're not willing to shoulder our cross and live sacrificially as legitimate disciples of the Messiah, we are but his adversaries. In short, to fail to embody his meaning is to deliberately work against him, to rebuke him with our lives, even though our tongues may continue to sing his praises. And while a rose by any other name might smell as sweet, discipleship is only true and sweet when we live as our Lord taught us, taking up our crosses and following him. So friends, who do you say he is? Grace, peace, and good health always, and have a blessed day.